Hi guys, my name is Tatiana, Life and Glow Wellness, and in this video I want to teach you how you can find out where important transits and eclipses fall into your chart. Now the first step, what you need to do is that you need to create your natal chart. If you don't have your natal chart yet, or you want to recalculate and double check it, do follow this video, how to calculate your natal chart for free, and then you will build your chart and you can already work with it. Now, I have to say that to get more information about your so-called astrological blueprint, you do need to know your birth time. Even approximate birth time does help as well. I mean, you need to know a little bit of the basics of astrology to understand how the moon moves during the day. In your chart, you will see that. In my video, I also explained that moment. But at least you can get a cosmogram and understand the positions of your planets, approximate degree or even exact degree of your planets. Now, planets move with different speed, and I'm gonna make a separate video about this topic. So depending on the planet, they might move the degree and sign within 1 day or 1 month or even 1 year and so on. There are also slower planets which take a lot of years to go through one sign or to complete the cycle of 12 astrological zodiac signs. So anyways, that's another topic, but what you need for now is that to understand the positions of your planets. The positions of planets have a certain degree and sign. For example, Sun can be on 15 degrees of Aries, or Moon can be, I don't know, 5 degrees of Leo, whatever. So this is important information. If you know your time of birth, you can find out the exact degree of the Moon. If you don't know your time of birth, you can maybe find out the sign of the Moon. And for finding out positions of the planets and the moon, also this book is available. This is American Ephemeris. We normally use Swiss Ephemeris or Ephemerids tables, as people say. So what you see here is that there are tables with planetary positions, and there are main planets which we take into account listed here. And even the advantage of this book, for example, is that it does list even position of the moon at 0 hour of the day, noon, and also, yeah, you can see the true north position. So you can see whether the moon was changing the position, the sign on that day or not. So let's say if you were born around 3 p.m. and then you see in the calendar or in Astrodeans that the moon was changing the position around 12 p.m. You can actually play with different time of birth in Astrodeans once you calculate your chart, and that will allow you to narrow down the span of moon degree on that specific day and time. I can show you also in a tutorial how to do that, but just like briefly information for you to keep in mind. Anyways, this is a little bit deeper topic, like in case you're new to astrology. What you just need to do is find out the position as close as you know of your sun, moon, and ascendant. If you don't know your time of birth, forget the ascendant. Just try to calculate approximately where your moon can be. And another option, by the way, is also to kind of read more about what signifies moon in a certain sign and in a neighboring sign if the moon was changing sign on that day. And then you can think what your mom was, what kind of character, what kind of home you had. So basically qualities of what moon signifies and how it manifested in your life. And that can also help you to narrow down moon position in your chart. I mean, it's just one of the ways how people can rectify the chart to some extent. Now, there are people who don't know their birth time and even birthday. So for those of you, and usually it's people who were adopted or for some reason data was lost. If you know your year of birth, that's already something which can give you information about slower planets, where the slow planets are located. And you can use this book, Ephemeris, and find out the positions of the slower planets. If you know the month of birth, it still gives you even more information. So you can find out whether these transits and eclipses, they touch any of your social planets, such as Saturn. Saturn changes the sign every 2 years, and Jupiter changes the sign every 1 year. So if you know your year of birth, you can find out the position of Saturn and Jupiter in many cases. And even if you don't know, again, think of what these planets represent and then what is true to you, and there is a way to rectify a little bit the chart in this case. Now if you need help, you can always write to me and I can try to do some kind of rectification. I don't do general rectification because I'm not trained in that. I tried to take the course, but I do not offer rectification because I'm a little bit skeptical about rectifying charts. For example, my chart was rectified with 5 different times, and some of them changed quite a lot in the chart. So I like rectifying the chart a little bit so that it's just a bit more exact than you know it. You can write to me what you need for astrology, and then I can answer you whether I offer this as a service. The second step which you need to do after you know positions of your planets is that to find out where eclipses were recently. Like for example, if it was like a month or 2 ago there was a corridor of eclipses, like find out what they triggered, and also where eclipses will happen in the upcoming year. For example, now I'm making this video in January 2020, and we will look at eclipses 2020. And actually this is an unusual year because there are 6 eclipses going on. It's crazy, but and for example, in my family, like my chart and my family members, they affect quite a bit. So I do expect that there might be changes in the family and also in our lives in general. I hope only for the better though. So the list of eclipses you can find out on different websites, and I will put the links in the description as well. And you can also even Google eclipses 2020, and you will find out the list of eclipses. On December 26th, 27th, it depends where you live, there was an eclipse which was very powerful. It was conjunct Jupiter, and it was a solar eclipse in Capricorn. A very interesting combination of planets, because Jupiter has this expansion element, and it wants to get us to another level of consciousness, you know, Jupiter wants to open some horizons, and Sun and Jupiter in Capricorn, and so it's more about contracting and letting go of something rather. It kind of brightens up a little bit the solar eclipse influence, because the eclipse corridor often feels quite intense to people if their charts are triggered. I would say that eclipse kind of opens the door to the transformation which is gonna follow. So here is how you can find out where eclipse falls into your natal chart. There are a couple of ways to do that. You can take your natal chart, whether it's printed or in an electronic version, and you can locate the position of the eclipse on your chart. For example, on January 10th, 2020, there will be a lunar eclipse in Capricorn, and it's on the 20 degrees of Cancer. So how I know that is that I know that the position of the moon will be in Cancer. If it's a solar eclipse, you will look at the position of the sun, where the transiting sun is. And that's quickly how you can find out, because sometimes it's confusing, you know, people mention the opposite sign quite often, so that's something to keep in mind. And actually, like, even though eclipse is in Cancer, it's in opposition to Capricorn, and it's in square, for example, to Aries and Libra 20th degree and around, and degrees around, and so this would also trigger those signs. So now when you know the position of the eclipse, you can understand what aspects it can form to your planets. For example, if you have a planet in Aries around 20 degree, the eclipse will form a square to your planet, and if you have planets in Cancer around 20 degree, it will be a conjunction. And same with house cusps. If you're sure about birth time, you can also check what house cusps can be triggered. I would say that the most powerful are the conjunctions with natal planets, especially the Sun, Moon, and the Ascendant. There could be events also related to activities connected with your personal planets, if your personal planets are triggered. For example, right now Pluto and Saturn are so close to my Mercury, and they're approaching my Mercury. My Mercury is on the 24th degree of Capricorn. I'm expecting a few years of quite serious transformation. So now that's how you can locate all the eclipses one by one. And I use a few different websites, Trines and Cafe Astrology, and there are a few other websites which list eclipses. So once you located the eclipse, you can understand which house it triggers. So for example, in my case, Cancer actually is 10th house. So basically eclipse over January 10th will trigger my 10th house. And because 4th house also is involved, we always look at the axis. 4th house is opposite the 10th house. So my 4th house is also triggered. So to see where eclipses fall into your chart, you need to have your natal chart. You need to know positions of the eclipses, their sign, degree, and also whether it's a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, and you can see where they fall into your chart. Eclipses can also form trines and sextiles to your chart and natal planets, especially moon, sun, and ascendant is important, as I mentioned. Closer aspects can bring some events. If you have, for example, moon on the 20th or 19 degrees of Virgo, or 21 degree of Virgo, that would be a sextile. And if you have moon in Scorpio or Pisces, that's also water signs, as Cancer, where lunar eclipses, this would form a triangle to those signs and planets in those signs. So that's how you can find out what aspects eclipse and certain conjunctions form to your chart. What is important also is that eclipse on January 10th, 2020 happens super close to the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn. Now this conjunction hasn't happened for over 500 years, and conjunction of Pluto and Saturn in some sign happens in general every 32-36 years, and there are always some significant events in political world and in life in general. So last time it was related to war as well. And so you can Google for more information on that. There's actually a very interesting lecture which a famous astrologer, Rick Levine, offered about influence of Saturn Pluto conjunction and opposition. A very interesting lecture which I've heard in the Guild, Astrological Guild in Vancouver, Fraser Valley Astrological Guild, and also it should be available on some websites, maybe some conference. If I find the link, I'll put it in the description. Now, what it means for us is that that's quite huge, because Saturn is in its home in Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn with Saturn signify rebuilding structures quite solidly, so that whatever doesn't work has to be let go once and for all. And Saturn signifies structure, business, building something very solidly. It's more of a dry, cold energy, as we say. And Pluto has this deep water, fire qualities. And when they come together, it's about building, it's about distracting things that do not work and being very, very serious about it, and then looking deeper into what is in decay, what is not working anymore. And they demolish things, and then they allow to reconstruct in a more solid way, and not just building some kind of new apartment, renovating quickly here and there, patching the holes, but rather than smashing it and getting to the fundament, to the base, if this base is usable at all, or remaking the base and then putting something which can work and serve for you many years. So start learning your chart if you are not connected to it yet. If you want to find out where conjunction of Pluto and Saturn happens, also find out on your chart where Capricorn is located. And conjunction happens on the 22nd degree, so whichever house it falls into, that house will be triggered. Also, we take into account the opposite sign because it's an axis and events often happen at the same time along the axis. For example, first house 7th house, second house 8th house, third house 9th house, fourth house 10th house, fifth house 11th house, and 6th house and 12th house. So this is the basics of astrology, and we look at conjunctions and oppositions as well. You will see on the screen a list of significations for houses, and so you can find out what sphere of life. Not just trust by default from forecast where some planet is in which house, but rather actually go and build the chart for transits and see how it's happening. In my tutorial, I was showing how to build natal chart, but there's also one chart type called natal and transits, or if you know progressions, you can also choose natal, transits, and progressions. And you can take a look at those charts, and usually transits are in red on AstroDienst in that setup, and then you can see where planets are transiting which house in your chart. Don't expect to see all the planets there. It shows you the transits which we take into account for events, more of a slower planet transits. And if you want to see also Sun, Moon, and personal planets, Venus, Mars, Mercury, then you go and build your natal chart as described in the video. And once you already have the chart, there is this small option also, chart with transits. Maybe I'll include a screenshot for you to show here. And that way you can see also where transits of all planets are. Okay. So there are a few things you need to know about eclipses, whether it's solar eclipse or lunar eclipse, which sign it happens and what degree it's on. And then the next step which you'll find out is that what house it's positioned in your chart. For example, let's say in my case, I have a 4th house, even though it starts at Sagittarius, but it's fully in Capricorn. And then while Pluto and Saturn are transiting Capricorn, they are kind of transiting my 4th house natally. If you live in another place, like me, for example, I relocated from Russia to Canada, so I would also check the relocation chart and where these planets, these long transits, fall into your chart. For example, in my case, Pluto and Saturn are actually transiting 11th house. And even though it's natally in the 4th, I do feel definitely that it affects in my 11th house as well. So it's kind of both. Natal always comes first, and then also you can check the relocation, especially if you've lived there for a long time. So your relocated chart is already quite active. It falls into the 4th house, and then in relocation chart it falls into the 11th house. I do understand that it will bring to even possible relocation or moving to a different place, and to maybe look at the community from a totally different perspective. I closed also some. I used to also do organizing dance events, and a couple of years ago I felt like I have to stop it because with my studies on astrology and therapy, it just got too much. And I had to let go of something. It wasn't easy, it was really difficult. At first, actually, I didn't connect it anyhow with astrology. I just more connected with numerology, because in numerology there are also cycles. If you reach to number 9 cycle, that's the time to let go of something, to complete something before you start a new cycle. But when I took a look at my relocation chart, I realized, wow, like this actually makes so much sense, because I am closing what I've done before to some extent, or putting some things on hold. I also put on hold jewelry business, and actually I have 2 planets in Capricorn. I like handmade things. I like to make things handmade, and but these planets are kind of crawling towards my Mercury and Mars, and so that is helping in a way to reconstruct the business and look at from a more professional perspective, like, is it just a hobby or you want to build something out of it? If, for example, Pluto and Saturn are transiting your 1st house or 7th house, you can expect changes in the relationships and in relationship to yourself. And it's not something really fast and like a click it happens. With Uranus, sometimes it can happen like this. People separate really fast or find another partner really fast, Uranus transits. However, with Saturn and Pluto, it's more over something has been boiling inside and maybe getting into this dysfunctional state. And then now it is time to address those older patterns, older issues maybe. And even sometimes in this case, I would recommend therapy to talk to a therapist or counselor or coach if you prefer coaching. It depends what really you need right now. And to look deeper into some things which didn't work out well and see if there are any patterns connected with your personal experience and maybe early childhood experience and things like that. Actually, even same thing about fourth house transit, because fourth house is related to your very, very early days, and it's also a good thing to do some kind of therapy. And in a way, for example, I've been learning so much psychotherapy, and when we learn, we practice with each other. And so through that, I actually worked out through some things from the past, and I feel so much more balanced and healed in a way. I use different techniques for healing, also esoteric methods, but I thought that this kind of was a remedy for this transit to avoid something which is much more dramatic. Learning therapy, and also actually Pluto is very close to my Mercury, and that helped me to work through some things, and it's gonna be happening in the next year, so it's not over, but I'm expecting to really kind of be even a different person after 2-3 years, because these seem to be quite significant years in my life. Now, if to talk more about Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, this year has been quite a difficult year for many people. People were undergoing internal changes. I've seen people saying on social media that they feel some depression or maybe some past wounds come up, some childhood traumas. The year 2019 as well as 2020 are the years for getting down into the deep psyche and to understand some unconscious patterns, what is triggering you, what is undermining you, and to try to bring that to the surface in a safe way and to let go and deal with whatever is not necessary. Now, you have to make it in a safe way, because if you are just cutting off some ends, that might not work necessarily. So I recommend taking psychotherapy sessions. This is the time also to look into family patterns, because Capricorn is opposite Cancer and we have eclipse in Cancer in January. So connect to your family and ancestry as well, and maybe see if something is not working out. You can check if there is any family history connected to that too. Perhaps you're not the first family member who experienced that. This work I would do with a trained specialist, whether it's a therapist or whoever is trained to do in a certain method connected with families. And this can help you to heal certain wounds from the past. I hope so. And whatever holds you down and doesn't allow it to get to the next level, to more free life, whatever you want for yourself. I offer sessions with art therapy and psychological counseling with metaphorical associative cards, mark cards as I call them. And if you need some help, I'd be happy to collaborate with you. This is a very fun method in a way. It's more of a creative way to connect to your subconscious. And it's important to do that healing work and let go of something which doesn't serve you well. On my channel also I post some exercises with metaphorical cards, usually within the review of a certain deck, and you can also check them out and maybe you can find those exercises helpful. Be prepared to transformation, and if you are ready already, just do something, change something in your life. I would also look into maybe acquiring more minimalistic lifestyle, because these planets in Capricorn also teach us how to be more efficient, how to be more minimalistic, how to create some kind of structures, both political economical and maybe even personal on some level, that will serve for years. That will not be just a one-timer, but a quick buck here and there, but it will be really something which will have a justified expense and which will justify our time. And in general, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn also teach us about time. When Saturn entered my 4th house, I started to be more aware of time. I took a reading from one very good astrologer, and he said, like, you don't have awareness of time. And I realized actually it's true, because that's why also I look quite young, because my perception of time is not as some other people's. Like, I do not look at time as a lifespan. Like, I really, now I do after a certain age, but in general, I feel like everyone can be young in some way, and it's more about your energy, in which condition you keep your health, what you eat, what you drink, and so on. So that also affects it. So I would recommend to think about time as well. How do you perceive time, and what is outdated in this, and what needs some reconstruction? Maybe you're too light-minded about wasting your years, you know. Maybe you're too serious, and it's time to get a little bit of playfulness into that. Another important thing about conjunction of Saturn and Pluto is that Mercury and Sun will be right there. It's crazy because it's like a stellium of planets together, triggering this eclipse on the 12th as well. So even if eclipse is earlier, but this conjunction puts some light and shadow on it. So that's why so many people are talking about this. Sun is our creative potential. It's our ego, it's our ambitions, and Mercury is the way we communicate. And when Mercury is conjunct Sun, when it's very close to Sun, I mean, we don't talk about Casimir Mercury, but in general, Mercury conjunct Sun is burned. So Mercury and also Saturn and Pluto, in a way, are burned by the Sun to some extent, just for a few days. But very interestingly, we have a few different elements present here. For example, Sun rules Leo, it's a fire sign. Mercury is a planet associated with air and mind, and it rules Gemini. It also rules Virgo, though, the Earth planet. So these signs will be triggered as well. And Pluto is Scorpio, it's very deep waters, and has this secret fire into it, in my opinion. And Saturn is an earth sign, so we kind of have like all elements present in this conjunction. And this is about integration. And if it's trining or sextiling or conjunct your moon, this is very, very powerful. It can help you to integrate yourself and to let go of something which is not necessary. If it's squaring your personal planets and ascendant, that's a little bit of a more challenging energy. That would probably make you let go of something which you're very resistant to letting go of. And it can bring some challenging events, but overall, if you estimate your life, if you analyze your life, you might anticipate that in a way and do certain steps. Because squares is energy, it implies effort made from you, by you. And so through that, you can also work it out. Now, another thing is that if your nodes are conjunct, square, or opposite this conjunction, this is also a very powerful thing. Especially within 1 or 2 degrees, in some cases 3 degrees as well, you might feel that influence. We have South Node and North Node, so you can also check in your natal chart whether your nodes are on the 20th degree or 19th, 21st degree. And especially in cardinal signs. And cardinal signs is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And if you do have, then those signs would be triggered. So again, guys, as a summary, if you have any planets in cardinal signs, that is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and also if you have nodes on the 20th, 19th, 21st degree in those signs, those are elements of the charts will be triggered. If your ascendant and descendant, MC and IC, are on those points as well, like this is super significant. But for exact time of birth, you need to be sure that that's the birth time, because because you know the biggest difference is within 1 or 2 degrees. So that's how you can analyze your chart and start noticing some things and researching more on what spheres of life might be triggered. If you want an astrological consultation, do contact me through the website lifeandglow.com. Also, I will have a website in 2020 called dancewithplanets.com. Currently it's not on, it's under construction. I have a draft on danceinplanets.weebly.com, but I'm changing provider, so the website will be on a different platform. I do also coaching and counseling with astrology and metaphorical associative cards, so you can find the link in the description and I'll be happy to collaborate with you. In the form you can mention your request and I will tell you what we can take for the consultation. Alright guys, I tried to pack a lot in this video. I hope you learned something from it. Stay tuned, subscribe, hit that notification button to stay connected and know which videos I post. Mention in the comments which of the eclipses of this year trigger your chart somehow, which house it falls. So if you have some events already happening, do mention as well. That way we can learn from each other what eclipses bring. Of course, it's important to see the whole chart, but even knowing how eclipse relates to Sun, Moon, Ascendant can already give some information. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you guys will enjoy 2020 and allow these transformations come into your life. Do your research, and also you can look at the retro eclipses, in which years what eclipse touched your chart. Use the same principle and you will find out this information. My name is Tatiana, Life and Glow Wellness, and I'll see you in another video.